Greetings Battle Brothers! Codex Space Marines 9th edition has finally arrived, so today we're going to compare your Primaris Aggressor with your old school Terminator. Both these guys have had significant changes in the new Codex. In this video we'll break down in depth the 7 main comparison points between each of these units. It'll help you guys pick the best unit for your next army list. If we're just meeting, my name's John, the Blood Angels Commander. Thanks for tuning into the weekly tactics video. On this channel, every week we try and give you the best advice to build the strongest Blood Angels list you can, and if you'd like more content like this, please consider hitting the red subscribe button. Okay, for the purpose of this video, we're going to be using our regular Terminators, not the assault version. So we're armed with Storm Bolters, Chain Fists or Power Fists, and then a Power Sword on the Sergeant. For the Aggressor, we'll use the Bolt Storm Gauntlets. I feel this will give us the best comparison in terms of what these guys can actually achieve on the battlefield. So let's dive right into it. We're going to start with some lore, and these awesome warriors definitely deserve it. We'll then look at the comparison points, and then finally we're going to finish this video with something new. If you want to skip ahead, the timeline will be marked appropriately. Terminator Armour, also known as Tactical Dreadnought Armour, is the heaviest armour available to a Space Marine. The zenith of battlefield protection. It is impenetrable to anything less than a hit by a las cannon. Indeed, the Terminator armour's adamantium exoskeleton is capable of supporting weapons deemed too bulky to be wielded by power armour troops, such as the Chain Fist, the Assault Cannon, or the lethally effective Cyclone Missile Launcher. All Space Marine chapters view Terminator armour as sacred relics and treasure them above any other war gear their chapter possesses. This is partly due to the great age of the armour, but largely because of the Crux Terminatus, the honour badge that sits proudly on each Terminator's left shoulder. Each Crux Terminatus, so the story goes, contains at its heart a sliver of the battle armour worn by the Emperor during his final confrontation with the arch-traitor Horus. Each suit of Terminator armour is very much considered to be a direct extension of the Emperor's will and honoured accordingly. On the other hand, we have the Primaris Aggressor, clad in heavy Grav X armour. Aggressor squads advance relentlessly through even the heaviest enemy fire. Though they are not swift, they are all but unstoppable, closing upon their enemy with a menacing surety of purpose. Missiles, bioacids, sorcerer's projectiles all splash harmlessly off their reinforced ceramite plates. This survivability is important, for the role aggressors occupy within the fire support squad is one of point-blank annihilation as opposed to long-range artillery duels. Each Primaris Aggressor wears a pair of massive Bolt Storm Gauntlets, whose underslung bolt weaponry provides a hailstorm of fire as they advance. The staccato roar of these weapons overlaps into hellish cacophony where multiple Aggressor squads press forward as one, deafening and panicking the foe in the moments before they are blown gorily apart by hundreds of mass reactive bolts. So we'll start with the main changes that these units have gone through in 9th edition, and we'll also look at the relevant point costs. So your Bolt Storm Aggressors with their Frag Storm launchers have stayed the same as we transition into the new edition. They are 45 points per model. While staying at the same number of points, the Aggressors have lost 2 key abilities that they had in the 8th edition. The first is Relentless Advance, which was they could ignore the -1 they would take for advancing and firing an assault weapon. So as Primaris Aggressors move 5, the +1 from Red Thirst when they advanced was a really strong part of their kit. If you think about it, they had 6 shots from their Bolt Storm and like D6 shots from their frag grenades, which is about 3.5 on average, so let's say 9. So hitting on 3s, you'd expect 6 or 7 hits. So hitting now on 4s, you expect 4 or 5 hits. So there's about a 20, maybe even 25% nerf to if they're moving and then advancing and shooting. The second ability they lost was their Firestorm. So previously, if the Aggressor squad didn't move, they could get to shoot twice. I feel like with careful positioning and good tactical play, you could always get them to shoot like twice, at least once in a battle. So this is a 50% nerf to their shooting if they remain stationary. So Aggressors have been really hurt in terms of their raw damage output from their shooting. So Terminators on the other hand, whereas Aggressors got 2 nerfs, Terminators kind of got 2 buffs. The First buff that we knew was coming, Terminators now have an additional wound, so it's 3 wounds per model. And then the second buff is the Terminator Homer ability has been reworked, and I feel it's a much more useful and stronger ability now. We're going to get into that in a second. So this extra wound, moving Terminators from 2 wounds to 3 wounds, and a 5-man squad, adds 5 additional wounds, so it's essentially a 50% health buff. However, you have to factor in like a lot of weapons are 2 damage, so a lot of weapons will now require 2 shots to kill a Terminator as opposed to 1 with a 2 damage weapon, such as storm cannons on Leviathan, stalker bolt rifles. So in terms of like the raw number of hits that the Terminators can withstand, I feel like this is quite a big increase. So I've looked at this teleport Homer rule, and I guess there's a few options around it. So you pay 5 points for your squad, you could start your squad in the battlefield, you could play your first couple of turns, and at any point at the end of your movement phase you can remove them from the battlefield with the intent to bring them back down in deep strike position in the next battlefield turn. So you have to still deep strike 9 inches away from the enemy. You can either deep strike them back 3 inches within allies or in your own deployment zone. But there's nothing to say you couldn't start these units in deep strike, bring them in, make a kill, make a charge, then in the next turn remove them and bring them back again. Remember, they only move 5, so if you wanted them at like 2 ends of the battlefield, you could never do that before. That's an option now, and I think the flexibility of whether you deploy them in deep strike or whether you actually start them on the board as well is kind of cool for only 5 points. I can easily see a scenario in a game where there's an uncontested objective, maybe back in your own deployment zone or near another friendly unit, and you're in, you know, turn 4 or something. If you think your Terminators are too far out, they only move 5 like I said, they can't get to where you need them to be, pick them up, turn 5 you can dump them down where you want, and I don't know, run onto an objective and get those points at the end of the game or something like that. So secondly, if we look at wounds and armour. Terminators obviously now have the 3 wounds, as we mentioned. They have the 2+ save, and they have the 5+ invulnerable save. Toughness 4. So they're quite resilient against like small arms fire, especially now with the 3 wounds. And they also have a good chance, like a 33% chance against saving against like las cannons, multi-meltas, the sort of weapons that would normally just vaporize people, right? So I feel like Terminators may actually become a staple in the new edition. They're certainly interesting as it stands. Although we aren't comparing the Assault Terminators today, it is worth noting that with your Assault Terminator, if you give them a Storm Shield and the Thunderhammer, then your Assault Terminator will have a 1+ save and a 4+ invulnerable save. So if you can get that Assault Terminator into cover, with a +1 from cover, you essentially have a 0+ save. So a Terminator would basically take a -2, and they would only need to be saving on 2s. Aggressors, on the other hand, their wounds are still 5, their save is still 3+, and they have no form of invulnerable save. Personally, I feel this invulnerable save is going to be like super critical in 9th. The fact that multi-meltas are now 2 shots, I think that we're going to maybe see multi-meltas come back on tanks. You know, you can get them for 25 points, that's 2 strength 8 hits, you could just delete units. So against Aggressor, obviously, there would be no save, and the multi-melta will probably, from a tank, hit on 3s, wound on 3s. So it's like a good chance. It seems like a valid tactic now to start sticking multi-meltas on tanks. I haven't seen that for a while, but I feel like it could come back. In part 7 of this video, we're actually going to put their armour to the test, so make sure you stick around for that. So in shooting, the Aggressors now average 9.5 shots per turn. They do have 18-inch range for both the grenades and the Bolt Storm Gauntlets. They're both assault, so you can still move and shoot all your ammo. So I guess that gives you sort of like a danger range or for the enemy of like 25 inches. So if you're 25 away, you can move, you can then advance with the +1, and then you could manage to shoot your enemy. So your Terminators are rapid fire 2, and their Storm Bolters is the same strength 4, no AP, 1 damage a shot. However, Terminators do benefit from bolter discipline, which means they can move their full 5 inches and then shoot their bolters at rapid fire 2, so it's 4 shots at 24-inch range. So these guys outrange their Aggressors a little bit, but it's 4 shots against 9.5 shots. So the Aggressors have a slight edge in shooting, 5.5 more shots per turn per model. However, they are 7 points more expensive, so we'll address that in part 7 of the video. If you're getting value, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps other Blood Angels players find the channel. So we move on to close combat next. So your Aggressors, 4 attacks for the sergeant, 3 for the regular guys. So when a squad of 3 charges, you're looking at around 13 attacks. The Boltstorm Gauntlets are essentially power fists, so that's strength times 2, -1 to hit, -3 damage, and now a flat 2 damage. So basically you'd average about 7.5 hits, and you'd be wounding toughness 7 and below on 2s, toughness 8 on 3s, toughness 9 above 4s. So your Terminators, let's say your sergeant has 3 attacks, it's 4 on the charge, he has a power sword that's now +1, -3, 1 damage. 2 of your Terminators have power fists, which are the same 2x strength, -3, 2 damage a go, and then now you have chain fists, which are -4, D3 damage a go, but a flat 3 against vehicles. So I think if I was building a squad of Terminators, I'd probably mix like a couple of power fists and a couple of chain fists, just so when you do run into a vehicle, you really are just crushing through it. Overall though, it's 16 attacks for the squad. So your aggressors have leadership of 8, but a regular squad's only 3, so it's going to be really hard to actually lose enough models to even fail a leadership test. The kind of same goes now for the Terminators on their 3 wounds with their invulnerable saves. They have leadership 9, but it's going to be really hard to shift those 3 wound models off in that they all have invulnerable saves. So I think leadership is kind of fine on these. There's no real benefit or disadvantage. I think you generally don't need to worry about it. Next, we normally talk about all the stratagems that we have. However, we're waiting on our codex, or our supplement rather. So we'll talk about 2 stratagems that I've picked out of the Space Marine Codex, and I think they're the only 2 that are valuable for these units. One's for the aggressors, which is transhuman, and now they've made it a little bit cheaper on squads up to 5. So it's 1 CP now for a squad up to 5, and basically that would make it that you only wound them on 4s. So any unmodified rolls of 1, 2, 3 are fails. So Space Marine Codex finally arrived 4 days later on the Thursday, supposed to arrive on Saturday, so I wanted to jump in with a super quick edit because there is one other stratagem in here that can be used on the Grav X armour units, and that is unyielding in the face of the foe. When they're targeted for an attack, you can pay 1 CP to add 1 to their armour save against any 1 damage weapons. For the Terminators, we still have access to Fury of the First. We had this, I believe, in the Blood Angels Codex. I think in the Blood Angels Codex it lasted for the entire turn. However, now it's per phase, and it lets you add 1 to your hit rolls in either the shooting phase or the close combat phase for 1 CP. So now for the Mathhammer part, I thought it would be really interesting if we could get 2 squads, 1 squad of Terminators, 1 squad of Aggressors, get them at similar points and just bash them together to see exactly what happens. We'll try the Terminators going first and we'll try the Aggressors going first. We'll really get a good feel of how they now play out on the battlefield. Obviously we'll just be using raw math, so there'll be no dice rolls, it'll be pure averages, so there's a bit of flexibility within the final result. So our 6 Aggressors have 18 wounds and then 57 bolter shots, 28 attacks on the charge. Our 7 Terminators have 21 wounds, 28 bolter shots, and then 22 attacks on the charge. We'll just assume for this test it's all power fists, except the Terminator Sergeant. He can't take a power fist, so he's going to be using his power sword. So we'll set up our 6 Aggressors 2 inches away from our 7 Terminators. We'll shoot, we'll close combat, we'll retaliate in close combat. Then we'll bring everyone back to life and do it the opposite way round. So the Aggressors going first, we're going to round to the nearest number and we're going to use all probability. So they have 57 bolter shots, hitting on 3s, that's 38 hits. They're wounding on 4s, that's 19 wounds. The Terminator save on 2 pluses, 3 fail, so 1 Terminator dies. Then the power fists, we got 28 of them. They hit on 4s, so that's 14 hits, sorry. So then they wound on 2s, that's 12 wounds. So the Terminators save on 5s. So 8 go through, so that's 8 times 2 damage, so that kills another 4 Terminators. The Terminators have lost 5 units. That's 190 points. In the old rules this would actually have wiped the squad because they only had 2 wounds each. However, there's 2 left, so we'll attack back just with 6 power fists to make it nice and simple. So it's 3 hits back, 2 wounds. Aggressors only save on 6s, so they actually, on probability here, it was like 0.38, so that round down to 0, so they get to kill 1 aggressor back. So 190 points of Terminators are dead, and 45 points of aggressors are dead, so it's a ratio of precisely 4 to 1 if the aggressors go first. Then let's talk about the Terminators. We set them up in front of the aggressors. So it's 28 bolter shots, hitting on 3s, so you get 18 hits. Wounding on 5s, you get 6 wounds. The aggressors save on 3, so 2 fail, so 1 aggressor loses 2 wounds. Then we'll use the 18 power fists from everyone except the sergeant. That's 9 hits, wounding on 2s, 7 wounds. Remember, we'd still get our +1 from Red Thirst, that's why 8 strength against toughness 5 is still 2s. So they only save on 6s, so 6 actually go through. So that kills the aggressor with 1 wound, kills 2 more models, and leaves a 4th model on 1 wound. Then our sergeant with his power sword, hitting on 3s. He gets 4 attacks, so he gets 3 hits, he wounds on 3s, 5 against 5, +1 from Red Thirst, he makes 2 wounds. The aggressor still only saves on 6s, so they both fail. So that kills the 4th aggressor and takes 1 wound off the next aggressor. So 4 are dead, and 1 wound is off one of the remaining 2. So that's 180 points of aggressors dead and essentially 15 points of injured because we took 1 wound off the other one and he's 45 points, so a third is 15. So essentially 190 points of damage. So now these 2 aggressors get to retaliate with their 8 power fists, hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, so 3 wound. We get to save on 5s, so basically they take 2 wounds, so they get to kill a single Terminator back, because 2 go through, so it's 38 points. So the Terminators did 195 against 38, so it's actually slightly higher than a ratio of 5 to 1. So when we look at them both, if the Terminators go first, it's actually 5.13 to 1 in terms of points against retaliation, and if the aggressors go first, it's 4 to 1 in terms of points in a retaliation. So yeah, despite firing quite a bit more often, right now, I guess probably Terminators are a little bit more versatile than aggressors. Bear in mind we did spend some of our points picking up that teleport homer so we can move about the map a little bit more. We definitely do more damage as the Terminators. I guess if the ratio was 4 to 1 and 5 to 1, then it's probably around 20% more damage your Terminators are actually doing, assuming that they get to shoot and make the charge. I guess if they don't make the charge, the aggressors win, but the strength 4 guns are never going to cause too many problems now with the number of shots being drastically reduced. I mean, the strength of aggressors before was in Tactical Doctrine and you stayed still in that second turn, then you could do like 100 bolter shots with -1. That was very strong. Ultramarines could obviously do that and still move, which was crazy strong. But I feel like maybe Games Workshop have taken too much from the aggressors. I don't think they needed to lose Relentless Advance. Maybe they could have lost Firestorm, but Relentless Advance seems like a bit harsh. And then if you think about if this combat had happened in turn 3 as a Blood Angels player and you had the -1 additional from the Power Fists, then this would have actually hurt the aggressors even more because now they would have had no save against the Power Fists, but your Terminators would have still had their Crux Terminatus 5+ invulnerable save. So unfortunately I have quite a lot of aggressors painted, but I think like maybe finally this is the point where like you saw the Terminator at the start is unpainted. The aggressors can sit on the back line now and we can actually start painting up some Terminators. Okay, just wanted to jump in with one other very quick edit. Terminator squads are core, aggressor squads are also core, so that means they'll still be affected by auras like Rites of Battle or Tactical Precision. So I think it's very clear. I think Terminators are definitely going to be back. I think there's going to be a place as well for Assault Terminators. We'll maybe do a video on them pretty soon if you want to hear out some of my ideas on that. I have some great ideas on that. Leave me a comment below on what you would like to see. And also let me know in the comments, are you going to continue using aggressors, or do you think that now is the rise of the Terminators? This sounds like the name of a movie, right? Anyway, thanks again for hanging out with me this week. I really hope some of that was useful. I have gone over and checked the maths a few times, so hopefully this week there's no mistakes. I think on this weekend, I haven't had any army list submissions this week, so I think probably what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Space Marine Codex. So there's quite a lot in there, and it might be quite cool if you guys want to come and hang out and we can kind of talk over what we think might be good in the new Space Marine Codex, because I guess for a few weeks till we get our supplement, we're kind of in a difficult spot. So, and also, if anyone was in the live stream last week, then you're going to hear about how I did against Iron Hands with this list that I was really struggling to make, and maybe this will help you build some lists in the interim till we get our supplement. I hope to see all you guys in the next one. By the blood are we made. Peace.